Part 1. The Prologue of a Ghost. I never thought I'd be that woman. You know the one. The woman people whisper about at grocery stores. The one who becomes a cautionary tale in a small town. For 45 years, I lived behind a white picket fence of morality. I was the wife who never missed an anniversary, the woman who kept the porcelain polished and the garden trimmed. But as I've learned, a house can look perfect on the outside while the foundation is being eaten away by termites. My foundation wasn't destroyed by a sudden explosion. It was destroyed by silence. 10 years of it. Today, I'm standing in the wreckage of a life I spent a decade building. All because of a single half-open door and a moment of unintended vulnerability that I can never unsee. It wasn't just a fleeting indiscretion. It was the spark that set my entire world on fire. This is a story about betrayal, yes. But more than that, it is a story about the inescapable weight of karma. Welcome to Karma After Cheating. My name is Linh. To the world, I had it all. My husband, Nam, was a provider. He was a man of logic, spreadsheets, and 14-hour workdays. He provided a beautiful home in a quiet suburb. But he forgot to provide a soul for that home. Over the years, Nam had developed a mistress I couldn't compete with. His career. In our vast, hollow house, the only consistent sounds were the rhythmic ticking of the grandfather clock in the foyer and the aggressive tapping of his keyboard from the home office. Nam didn't come home to a wife. He came home to a facility manager. He'd arrive late, his eyes glued to his phone, eat the dinner I had kept warm under silver cloches in total silence, and then retreat back into his digital world. He forgot the color of my eyes when I'm happy. He forgot that I prefer tea over coffee. I had become a ghost in my own life, a piece of expensive furniture that kept the house running and the bed made. Part 2. The Arrival of the Mirror. Then came Quan. Quan is Nam's son from his first marriage. His mother had passed away when he was young, and for years he lived with his grandparents. But after graduating from university, he moved in with us while searching for his path in the world. The first day he walked through the door, the energy of the house shifted. Quan was 22, radiating a raw, unedited life that Nam had long ago traded for a corporate title. He looked like a younger, softer version of his father, the man I fell in love with before the spreadsheets took him away. But when Nam was cold and calculated, Quan was observant and warm. He didn't just walk past me in the hallway, he looked at me. He noticed the small things. He'd say, "That's a beautiful scarf, Linh," or "You seem tired today, let me handle the dishes." At first, I was uncomfortable. I had been invisible for so long that being seen felt like a bright light hurting my eyes. I felt a maternal protectiveness toward him. But there was something else. A strange, quiet wisdom in his eyes that felt like he was reading the chapters of my loneliness that I hadn't even admitted to myself. I remember one rainy Tuesday afternoon. Nam was, as usual, at the office, which really meant he was at the altar of his ambition. I was sitting by the window, watching the droplets race down their glass, feeling the familiar weight of a Tuesday that felt like every other Tuesday for the last 3,000 days. Quan walked in, holding a book. He didn't ask, "What's for dinner?" He sat on the rug near the window and said, "The rain makes this house feel like it's floating in the middle of the ocean, doesn't it?" I looked at him, startled. "Yes," I whispered, "it does." You look like you're waiting for a ship that's never coming, Lin, he added softly. That was the first crack in the dam. He didn't just see a stepmother. He saw a woman drowning in a sea of beige luxury. Part 3. The incident at the door. The turning point happened on a mundane Saturday. The air was thick with the scent of mown grass and the distant hum of a neighbor's leaf blower. Nam was away on a weekend business retreat, another essential networking event. The house felt lighter without his heavy, judgmental silence. I had spent the morning doing laundry, a task I usually found meditative. I gathered a basket of freshly dried clothes, the fabric still warm and smelling of lavender. I climbed the stairs, my mind drifting through a list of chores, and headed toward Kwan's room. Usually, I'd hear his music, that soft indie folk he liked, playing through the door. But today, it was silent. I assumed he had gone for his usual 5-mile run. I reached the door, my hip nudging it open because my hands were full of the basket. The door wasn't latched. It swung open with a soft, agonizingly slow creak. A sliver of golden afternoon light cut across the room, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. Dodge. And there he was. Kwan was sitting on the edge of his bed, his back to me. He was completely exposed, caught in a moment of intense private vulnerability. I should have gasped. I should have dropped the basket and sprinted down the hallway. My brain screamed at my legs to move, but they were rooted into the hardwood floor. In that heartbeat, a terrifying, visceral surge of electricity ran through me. It wasn't just shock. It was the sudden, violent realization of a human presence, a man's presence, in a house where I had been living with a shadow for a decade. I felt like a thief. I felt like a criminal peering into a forbidden world. I watched the rise and fall of his shoulders as he breathed, unaware of my presence. For 3, maybe 4 seconds, time simply stopped existing. The moral compass I had carried since childhood didn't just break. It spun wildly until it pointed nowhere. When Kwan finally sensed the change in the room's air and turned around, our eyes locked. The shame was immediate, a hot, searing wave that turned my skin bright red. But deeper than the shame was a dark, unbidden curiosity. We stared at each other for what felt like an eternity. No one spoke. The air in the room felt thick enough to drown in. That was the moment my reality officially fractured. Part 4. The magnetic tension. The days following the incident were a slow torture. I expected Kwan to be distant, to look at me with disgust. But he didn't. Instead, the atmosphere between us became charged with a magnetic, heavy tension. Nam came back from his retreat, more distant than ever. He sat at dinner talking about a potential promotion, his voice a dull drone in the background. Across the table, Kwan sat quietly. He didn't look at his father. He looked at me. Every time our eyes met, I saw the memory of that Saturday afternoon reflected back. It was our secret, a heavy, pulsating thing that sat between us like a third guest at the table. Kwan started to linger in the spaces I occupied. If I was in the garden, he'd find a reason to prune the nearby roses. If I was in the kitchen, he'd offer to help chop vegetables, his hand occasionally brushing against mine as we reached for the same knife. Each touch felt like a burn. I knew I should stop it. I knew I should tell him to keep his distance. But the ghost inside me was waking up. For the first time in 10 years, someone was looking at me like I was a person, not a housekeeper. One night, a massive thunderstorm rolled through the valley. The power flickered and then died, plunging the house into a blackness so deep it felt physical. Nam was, as usual, asleep in his separate study, exhausted from his hard day of making money. I went to the kitchen to find candles. The lightning flashed, illuminating the room in strobes of blue and white. When the light faded, I realized I wasn't alone. Kwan was standing in the doorway. "I couldn't sleep," he said, his voice low, vibrating in the small space between us. "Neither could I whispered. He stepped closer. In the next flash of lightning, he was right in front of me. I could feel the heat of his breath. "You're still thinking about it, Lin. I can feel it every time you walk past me." I tried to turn away, but he reached out, his hand gently catching my chin. "Why are you so afraid of being alive?" I didn't have an answer. My heart was thudding against my ribs like a trapped bird. We were walking on a tightrope over an abyss. A new hon, a shared embrace. It was all right there, waiting for us to fall. Part 5. The Harvest of Karma. But the fall didn't happen. At least, not the way you'd expect. Just as the line was about to be crossed, Kwan pulled back. He looked at me with a mixture of sadness and a clarity that I lacked. 2 days later, I found him in the foyer with a single suitcase. "I'm leaving, Lin," he said. He had found a job across the country. "If I stay here, I'll become like my father. I'll start taking things that don't belong to me just because I can as. And you'll lose the only part of yourself you have left." When the door clicked shut behind him, the house didn't just become silent. It became a tomb. I sat on the stairs and cried. Not for Kwan, but for the version of myself that had almost traded 10 years of dignity for a moment of validation. I looked at Nam that evening. He didn't even ask why Kwan had left so suddenly. He just grunted, "Good, he needs to stand on his own feet," and went back to his laptop. That was my moment of clarity. This was my karma. You see, karma isn't always a lightning bolt from the sky. It is the slow, agonizing harvest of the seeds we plant every day. Take Nam. He sowed seeds of indifference for 10 years. He thought money and a big house were enough to keep a soul fed. His karma was the loss of a connection he didn't even realize was gone. He still has his house and his spreadsheets, but he is living with a woman who has checked out emotionally forever. He is a king in a kingdom of one. Then there's me. My karma was the agonizing guilt. I had to face the fact the day that I was so starved for affection that I were willing to look at my own stepson as a lifeline. My karma is the memory of that half-open door. A haunting, constant reminder of the person I almost became. I didn't cheat in the physical sense, but my heart had wandered into a dark room, and I can never quite find the way back out. The lesson here that is simple yet devastating. Karma thrives in the spaces we leave empty. If you don't tend to your marriage, the weeds of resentment and forbidden desire will take over. We often think we can ignore our partners without consequence, but silence is the loudest warning sign of a coming storm. Don't wait for a door to open in your own life to realize what you're losing. Cherish the person beside you while they are still trying to reach for you. Because in the end, Karma always collects its due, and the price is usually much higher than we ever imagined. Thank you for walking through this darkness with me. May your own path be one of clarity and intentional love. This has been another story of reflection here at Karma After Cheating.